My name is Hannah, and I'm going to be presenting the parts of the brain and its functions for Mr. Fortunes class. So the first portion of my presentation will be covering the surface portion of the brain. This model is a representation of the top view of the brain. What I will first list will be the two hemispheres of the brain. The brain is split into two hemispheres, each with their own specialized function. I won't get too much into detail of the two hemispheres other than the importance of them and how they function in respect to our body. So what we have here is the right hemisphere. This side is the right hemisphere, and it controls the left side of our body. And the left hemisphere controls the right side of our body. Next, we have the surface features of the brain. The light pink colored paint right here is the sulcus, and the sulcus are grooves of the brain's surface that help form important landmarks which allow the separation of the brain into functional centers. Each sulcus and their locations play a significant role in the separation of lobes and cortexes in both hemispheres. Now, the opposite of the grooves, which is everything else that is colored, is just like the wrinkles, is what I call them, just that they look like wrinkles of the brain. These are known as gyruses, and they are bumps or folds in the brain. Not in the brain, they are bumps and folds on the brain. Each region of the brain and their cortexes are broken down into different gyruses. Now, this long section, or like this line down the middle, is the longitudinal fissure. I do have to note that the corpus callosum can at times be confused because it is located here as well. But the difference is that the corpus callosum is lower down, while the longitudinal fissure is the opening space between both hemispheres. The longitudinal fissure is located at the top of the brain, separating the two brain hemispheres and allowing them to function alone. Moving on with the outside of the brain and the inside of the brain, I'm going to have to change the camera view. So this model that I am showing you is the most important cortex, the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the exterior layer of the brain with all the important interior parts dwelling right below it. The cortex is responsible for processing all higher levels of consciousness, emotion, thought, reasoning, language, and memory. The cerebral cortex is considered the ultimate control and information processing center. These following cortexes will be shown on this upper view noted on the other two portions of the brain model as the presentation goes on. What you will see is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is accountable for a higher level of functioning, and then right next to it is the motor cortex, which assists in planning and coordinating movement. Then it's the somatosensory cortex is located right behind the motor cortex. It is vital for the processes of touch and sensation. Right out here, where is it? Is the auditory cortex, is located and is responsible for processing auditory information. And lastly is far back portion of the brain. You will see the visual cortex, which is right here. This portion of the brain is broken up into three major regions known as the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain is located just here and covers the whole upper region of the brain. The forebrain contains the cerebral cortex and all structures that lie underneath the cortex. So, if we flip the brain over to its side, this is the interior view of the brain and would be considered the structures that lie underneath the cerebral cortex or within all three regions of the brain. But we'll go over the internal part brain in just a bit, just giving you a small preview. The second major region is the midbrain, which would be right here. The midbrain's primary role is in sensory and motor functions, including regulating our consciousness, and it is responsible for our body's motor movement, particularly with the movements of the eye and in the auditory and visual processing. And lastly is the hindbrain, which is located here in the lower rear portion of the brain. This division or region of the brain includes the upper portion of the spinal cord and the brainstem and the cerebellum. The hindbrain is largely responsible for the controls of the body's functions. One thing I forgot to mention for the other regions is that for all three portions, the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain location is with both the left and right hemispheres. I wanted to mention that since I'm only holding up and showing half of the brain. Now, the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain are each broken up down further with their respective areas that cover the brain. This is where I get to show you the part of the brain that I created. Lastly, we have the brainstem, which is responsible for the automatic nervous system and various functions like swallowing, digestion, alertness, ability to sleep, sweating, reflexes to seeing and hearing. Then we have the thalamus, which is best known as the brain's relay system for relaying messages between the lower brain, the cerebral cortex, and our body. You can consider it a broadcasting center for information. Then right across it we have the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus controls the maintenance functions like eating, and it is linked in our emotional and reward system, handles bodily functions like temperature, appetite, and blood pressure. Then right below it we have the amygdala. This helps process emotion and ties emotion to memories. Next is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is located below the thalamus and is a critical component for the structure of learning and constructing new memories. Then here we have the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is made up of 1 million axon fibers connecting the two cerebral hemispheres known as the right and left hemispheres. This connection authorizes information to be processed and shared with both sides of the brain. Then you see here we have the pons and medulla, which makes up the brainstem. The medulla manages the automatic functions of the nervous system, such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. The pons is connected to the hindbrain, which helps it relate to the whole brain. It also helps regulate the brain's activity during sleep.